The village of Marrow Creek had always prided itself on tradition. Every autumn, when the fields turned gold and the air smelled of smoked grain and wood fire, the town gathered for the harvest feast. It was meant to be a celebration of abundance, but in truth, it had become something else over the years, a stage where people measured status, wealth, and pride behind polite smiles and polished tables. And this year, they had found their entertainment. At the edge of the valley lived a man everyone called the Mountain Beggar. No one knew his real name anymore. He lived alone in a stone hut high above the tree line, came down only rarely, and never stayed long in town. His clothes were worn, his boots patched more times than anyone could count, and he carried himself with a quietness that made people uncomfortable, as if he noticed too much without saying anything at all. So when Mayor Ellison suggested inviting him to the harvest feast, the room went silent for a moment before laughter spread. "It'll be good for morale," someone said. "Let him see how real people live. He'll probably think it's a royal banquet," another added with a smirk. No one said the truth aloud, but everyone understood. They wanted to watch him be out of place. To see him struggle with forks and wine glasses. To remind themselves that no matter how simple their lives were, there was always someone lower in the ladder. The invitation was delivered by a boy from the council, who returned pale and uneasy. He claimed the mountain man had simply nodded once, as if he had already expected it. That response unsettled a few people, but not enough to change their plans. On the night of the feast, the town hall was glowing. Long tables stretched end to end, covered in roasted meats, glazed vegetables, baskets of bread, and shining glassware. Candles flickered like tiny controlled stars. Laughter echoed off wooden beams. The air smelled rich, heavy, almost excessive. They waited for him. Some guests even made quiet bets about whether he would show up at all. "He probably realized he doesn't belong," one woman whispered. "Or he's too embarrassed," said another. Mayor Ellison raised his glass slightly, ready to begin the welcoming speech anyway, when the doors at the far end of the hall creaked open. The noise inside didn't stop immediately. It faded slowly, like a wave retreating from shore. The mountain man stood in the doorway. He didn't look impressed. He didn't look intimidated either. He simply looked present, as if the room had to adjust to him, not the other way around. His coat was the same rough, weather-worn fabric everyone expected. His hair was uncombed, dark-streaked with gray. But his eyes, sharp, steady, and strangely calm, moved across the hall with quiet attention. For a moment, no one spoke. Then someone chuckled. "Well," a man near the front said loudly, "he actually came." A few scattered laughs followed. The mountain man stepped inside. He walked slowly, not hesitating, but also not rushing to meet anyone's expectations. People noticed the small things immediately, how he didn't look at the food, how he didn't stare at the decorations, how he seemed more interested in the structure of the room than its luxury. One boy near the wall whispered, "Does he even know where to sit?" Someone else replied, "Let's see where he tries." A chair had been deliberately placed at the very end of the longest table, slightly separated, slightly lower than the rest, almost hidden behind a pillar. It wasn't accidental. Mayor Ellison gestured warmly. "You're welcome. Please, join us." The mountain man gave a small nod and walked, not toward the empty seat they had prepared, but further down the table. He stopped at the center. Right where the mayor and the wealthiest landowners sat. A strange silence spread again. Without asking permission, he pulled out a chair and sat down. For a split second, no one reacted. Then a few awkward laughs broke out, unsure whether this was boldness or ignorance. "You've chosen quite the seat," Mayor Ellison said with a thin smile. The mountain man looked at him briefly. It was the right one. That was all he said. Something about his tone ended the conversation before it could grow. Dinner continued, though less smoothly than before. Servants poured drinks a little too quickly. Conversations restarted in fragments. People kept glancing at the man who was supposed to be the joke of the evening. They tried to steer the moment back into comfort. So, one landowner said loudly, "Life up in the mountains must be difficult." "Yes," another added, smiling, "no feasts like this, I assume." The mountain man tore a piece of bread slowly. "You'd be surprised what the mountains provide." A few chuckles followed. "Do you farm up there?" someone asked. "I listen," he replied. That answer made no sense to most of them. A few exchanged confused looks. Mayor Ellison leaned back. "Listen to what, exactly?" The man paused, as if choosing whether the answer mattered. "To the land." Again, laughter, soft, dismissive. But as the night went on, something strange began to happen. The wind outside shifted. At first it was subtle, just a pressure change against the walls. Then came a distant sound, like water moving too fast over stone. The mountain man lifted his head slightly. No one else seemed to notice yet. A servant passed behind him and nearly dropped a tray. The candles flickered harder now, flames bending as if reacting to an unseen force. The man placed his hand on the table. "Storm," he said quietly. A few people frowned. The sky outside was clear when they arrived. Mayor Ellison smiled. "There hasn't been a storm forecast tonight." The mountain man didn't argue. He simply looked toward the windows. And then the first drop hit the glass. Within seconds, the calm outside shattered. Rain came like it had been waiting above the clouds, all at once released. Wind slammed into the building. The wooden beams creaked under sudden pressure. The lanterns swayed violently. Conversation broke into chaos. "That wasn't expected." "Close the shutters." People stood, confused, some rushing toward doors. But the mountain man didn't move. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if calculating something no one else could understand. When he opened them again, he spoke one sentence that cut through the rising panic. "This is only the beginning." And for the first time that night, no one laughed. By midnight, the harvest feast had turned into something unrecognizable. The storm outside didn't fade, it deepened. Rain hammered the roof in relentless waves, and the river near the valley had begun to rise faster than anyone had seen in years. Servants ran between rooms shouting warnings. The town hall, once filled with celebration, now felt like a shelter holding its breath. Mayor Ellison tried to maintain control, but his voice was drowned out by panic. "How did you know?" he finally demanded, turning to the mountain man. The room quieted slightly. Even in chaos, people wanted answers. The mountain man stood slowly. "The soil has been shifting for weeks," he said. "The moss lines on the north ridge turned early. The insects left the lower fields 3 days ago. The wind changed direction at dawn." No one spoke. These were not guesses. They were observations. "You could have warned us," a woman said sharply. "I did," he replied calmly. 2 weeks ago. When I came down to speak at the council hall. A memory surfaced in a few minds then, an unshaven man standing outside the council building, speaking quietly about unstable ground and unusual river behavior. He had been turned away. Someone had laughed. Someone had told him to stop spreading superstition. They had not listened. Now the river was climbing its banks. A crash echoed from outside as something gave way, possibly the lower bridge. Panic surged again. "We have to evacuate," someone shouted. But the mountain man raised a hand. "No. Not through the East Road." "Why not?" Mayor Ellison snapped. "Because it's already underwater." Another silence fell, heavier than before. A young council worker ran in, soaked, breathless. "He's right. The East Road collapsed near the bend." That was enough. People scrambled in different directions, fear replacing mockery. The feast was forgotten. Tables were abandoned. Wealth and pride no longer mattered. In the confusion, the mountain man moved toward the main doors. "Where are you going?" someone called. "To higher ground," he said. "And to make sure no one is left behind." Something in his voice made even the proudest men follow without argument. Outside, the storm roared like a living thing. And as the town of Marrow Creek began its desperate evacuation, one truth settled quietly among them all. The man they had invited to be laughed at was the only reason any of them would make it through the night alive. The rain had turned Marrow Creek into something unrecognizable. What was once a neat valley of golden fields and tidy fences was now a shifting, broken landscape of water and mud. The river had swallowed its banks completely, rushing through low paths that only hours earlier had been dry. The harvest hall, once filled with laughter and pride, now stood like a dim lantern in the storm, its windows shaking, its doors rattling under the pressure of wind and water. Inside, panic had replaced celebration. People who had spent the evening laughing at the mountain man were now clinging to his words like lifelines. "We need to move, now," someone shouted. "Take the children first. Where is the bridge crew? Someone get the bridge crew." But there was no order anymore, only motion. And in the middle of it all, the mountain man moved differently. Not frantic. Not rushed. Certain. He stood near the wide doors, listening, not to the people, but to the building itself. The way the beams groaned. The way the wind struck the walls. The way the water outside pressed against the foundation like it was testing patience. Then he spoke again. "Stop using the east exit." Mayor Ellison, soaked and shaking, turned sharply. "We already know it's flooded." "It's worse than flooded," the man replied. "The ground beneath it has collapsed into the old quarry channel. If you step there, you won't come back." A few people hesitated. The warning was too specific, too calm. "How do you know that?" someone demanded. The mountain man looked at them briefly. "Because I walked it yesterday." That made no sense to most, until it did. A man from the council suddenly went pale. "He did, he asked about the quarry maps last week." "And we ignored him," another whispered. A heavy silence followed, broken only by the storm outside. Another loud crack echoed through the building. One of the side beams had shifted. The structure was not safe anymore. "We go north," the mountain man said, his voice cutting through panic. "There's higher ground behind the old wind ridge. The stone holds there." No one argued this time. Not because they trusted him completely, but because everything else was falling apart too quickly to question the one person who seemed to understand it. He pushed open the main doors. Wind hit them like a physical force. Rain sliced sideways through the air. The lantern light from inside flickered behind them like a fading memory. The town outside was now half submerged, pathways erased, fences broken, carts overturned. People followed him out. At first, only a few. Then more. Then almost all. The moment their feet touched the flooded ground, hesitation returned. The water was cold, rising above ankles in places, deeper in others. The current pulled at their legs like something alive. A woman screamed as she slipped, only to be caught by the mountain man without hesitation. He steadied her, then pointed forward. "Stay close to the stone line," he said. "Do not step into open water. The current is stronger than it looks." They obeyed. Even Mayor Ellison, who had once spoken of the man with amusement, now followed quietly behind him. The group moved slowly through the storm. Every step was a negotiation with nature. At one point, a wooden cart broke loose from higher ground and rushed down the flooded street, smashing into a fence just meters from where people had been standing seconds before. Gasps erupted. The mountain man didn't react outwardly. He only adjusted their path. This way, he said. The slope will redirect the water flow here. We lose depth but gain stability. No one questioned how he knew. They just followed. The climb toward the ridge was harder. The higher they went, the stronger the wind became. Trees bent violently. Loose stones slid underfoot. The storm felt closer, louder, more personal. A child cried from exhaustion. An elderly man stumbled, unable to keep pace. Without a word, the mountain man turned back, lifted the man's arm, and helped him forward. You should have stayed in your home, the old man muttered weakly. There will be time to go back, the mountain man replied. If there's anything left, the man whispered. There will be, he said. Not hopeful. Certain. That difference mattered. Halfway up the ridge, a low rumble rolled through the ground. The mountain man stopped immediately. Every instinct in him sharpened. Everyone stop, he ordered. A few people looked confused, but they obeyed. The rumble grew louder. Then came the sound no one wanted to hear, the collapse of earth. Behind them, part of the lower valley gave way entirely. A section of road, already weakened by water, vanished into a rushing sinkhole of mud and stone. If they had been even minutes slower, the entire group would have been swallowed. A collective silence followed. Someone whispered, "We would have been down there." No one finished the sentence. The mountain man turned back toward them. Keep moving. No panic. No pause. Only direction. By the time they reached the upper ridge, the storm had reached its peak. But here, the ground was different. Solid rock beneath their feet. Higher than the flood. Safe, for now.